What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And the New York Giants might have found a steal in the sixth round of the 2023 NFL Draft, selecting Tre Hawkins out of Old Dominion. Now, Old Dominion might sound familiar to some of you because O'Shane Ximines was drafted out of Old Dominion in 2019, I believe, in the third round by the Giants. He's gone on to have a pretty successful career, all things considered, as a mid-round draft pick, but maybe never reaching the heights that fans wanted him to. But here, I think there could be a different story told with Tre Hawkins. I think that he could exceed expectations because he's bringing a rare blend of size, physicality, and speed to the defense at the cornerback position. So today, we're going to go ahead and discuss Tre Hawkins, what he could maybe get up to as a rookie, how much of an impact he could have on the defense, and really what we see his potential to be long-term as well. But before we dive into all of that, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Fireside Giants, and go ahead and check us out on Facebook as well. But before I hand it over to you, Alex, I want to say thank you all for the birthday wishes a couple days ago. It means a lot to me, and I appreciate it, and I hope you all had a fantastic 4th of July celebration. So, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? How was your 4th of July, and what are your thoughts on Tre Hawkins?
I'm doing good, man. Good 4th of July. I hope everyone had a safe holiday as well. Some fireworks. Don't pull a JPP on us. Keep your hands safe, my friends. It's dangerous out there. People shooting fireworks everywhere. I saw some crazy videos. I live like in the Upper East Side, like all the way in the upper 90s. And I looked out my window towards Harlem, and people were shooting fireworks off their roofs at cars. It was an absolute show. It was hilarious. It was awesome. Looking at the windows over here, it's definitely a sight to behold. But guys, about the Giants, Tre Hawkins, really exciting young player. And I'll tell you what makes me excited about Tre Hawkins is nothing more than he is an absolute stud athlete. The Giants went after athleticism this year in their 2023 draft class. That's been a point that I've been trying to make pretty consistently over the past couple of weeks. They've tried to overhaul that kind of catalyst, that variable across the roster, whether it's receiver, it's offensive line, it's cornerback, defensive backs entirely. They've tried to increase the athleticism, and that's a really good sign because you get good guys who are coachable, that are really good athletes. You can make something of them. If you have below average athletes or average athletes, their ceilings are always going to be capped. You're bringing good culture fits that are smart, that have excessive athleticism. You're in a good shape, and I think that Hawkins is ultimately in a good spot. But Anthony, tell me a little bit about what you think about Tre Hawkins, why he could be a decent player at the NFL level.
Well, the reason that I think he could be a decent player is because I think he landed in a perfect situation with the New York Giants. Now, defensive coordinator Wink Martindale plays a very specific brand of defense, and he likes a very specific brand of cornerback to play in that defense. And what he likes is tall cornerbacks with a lot of length and a lot of speed. And that's what Tre Hawkins provides to this defense. He's 6'2", 188 pounds. It's pretty rare that you find cornerbacks at that height and weight. And Tre Hawkins is one of those cornerbacks. So he's got physicality. He was great against the run as well, which we know that Wink Martindale prioritizes. That's one of the things that made him really fall in love with Deonte Banks. Deonte Banks is a very willing tackler, and so is Tre Hawkins. So he's got all the tools. Again, the size, the length, the speed. He's got some punch to him. He can hit you. He can tackle. And that's really what you're looking for in this Wink Martindale defense. Wink Martindale loves those corners that have all the speed and all the tenacity to play in this aggressive style of a defensive scheme. So that's what I'm seeing out of Tre Hawkins that I really like. But Alex, when you look at that and the way that, Tre Hawkins's game fits in with Wink Martindale's defense, do you think that there could be a path for him to see some playing time as a rookie?
It's a good question. Of course, you don't want to see 6th-round draft picks playing like reasonable amount of snaps in the rookie season because that means you either have injuries or major deficiencies at some points in the roster. What I'd love to see is for him to win a special teams job. And he had some really good quotes actually regarding that aspect entirely. Like he wants to fight his way onto the roster. He said, I could see myself playing anywhere in the NFL. I can fit any scheme. He went on to say, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to earn my trust on special teams. I'm looking forward to taking that role. And I think that's exactly where you want to start. You're a late round draft pick. You have a lot to prove, a lot to learn. A lot of his issues are experience-based and just, IQ, stuff that he hasn't seen before, going up against, top tier talent. Like he's gone up against some decent teams, but you're not talking about the Alabamas of the world. You're not talking about the Georgias of the world. Like he needs the time to grow and learn this, the defensive scheme and just get some reps against players of his own quality and practice against those second, third stringers and work his way up the roster. Maybe when a gunning role, he's really a good athlete, good speed. I think that gunner spot, there's going to be a lot of competition there. Guys like Jeff Smith, bringing from the Jets. have a lot of potential there. A lot of like late round picks from last year and this year are going to be competing for special teams roles. This is where you're going to see those guys fight their way onto the roster. Like this is where you see a lot of guys start out and then continue their development until they get that opportunity on the active roster, rather just on like whether it's the B team or it's the A team. They have to take the time to continue their development. And ultimately, Tre Hawkins has great size. I think he's 6'1", if I'm not mistaken. So he's got really good wingspan. And he's going to be able to learn 6'2", 188 pounds. So he's actually got really even better size than that. And you look at, he was a track standout in high school. He's got really good speed. Oftentimes he finds himself just like a foot behind. He can react a little bit too slow at times, but I think that's experience-based personally. I think that's just knowing what's coming, communicating. He's going to learn a lot from guys like Adoree Jackson that are ahead of him on this team. And Jerome Henderson is one of the best DB coaches in the league. The Giants don't draft players randomly anymore. They draft players with a purpose. And I think that Tre Hawkins serves a purpose long-term.
I think so too, and I think that the short-term purpose, as you just mentioned, is going to be on special teams. He has a 4.42 40-yard dash, which that stat, the 40-yard dash, we always talk about that because it's a good benchmark for how fast a player is, but how often is it really put into practice that a player is running on a straight line for 40 yards? Well, the only time that it really is put into practice is on special teams. So that's where you see those 40-yard dash times really start to make an impact. So when you've got a guy like Tre Hawkins with a 4.42 40-yard dash time, but he also put up 17 bench reps, so he's got some solid strength, and he's 188 pounds, 6'2", plus we know he can tackle. That is a special teams ace right there. That is perfectly done. That's what you need. You need a guy who can run in that 40-yard dash very quickly and bring some tackling to the back end of the play. So I like Tre Hawkins getting involved early on special teams as a gunner and then eventually developing into something for the defensive unit to make use of. Again, I think that, like you mentioned, 6th-round picks, you don't necessarily want to see those guys on the field. If they're making such an impact in practice that you just have to put them on a field, then, that's fantastic. Let's do it. But Tre Hawkins, in all likelihood, probably won't see too much playing time on the defensive side of the ball, but I do think that he could get involved in the special teams very early and very often. So I will say, though, when you look at his relative athletic score, it's very impressive. It's a 9.82 out of 10 because of the 40-yard dash split, which was 4.42. And also he put up a great 3-cone time of 6.74 seconds. But also, this guy's explosive. 10-foot, 9-inch broad jump. This guy can jump out of the gym, which is something you always love to see. His athletic score is comparable to Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, who we all know and love from his time with the New York Giants. So I do see an opportunity here for Tre Hawkins to really develop his game because of the rare tools that he has in terms of his athleticism and his size and physicality. And I think that's really what Wink Martindale is going to hone in on. But Alex, when you look at the status of this defensive secondary, right? The Giants just added Deonte Banks. They still have Adoree Jackson under contract for another year. But behind those guys, there's a lot of question marks. And Tre Hawkins could have a lane here to maybe take over as a starting outside cornerback one day. So what are your thoughts on that? His long-term potential here with the team and how he could maybe rise through the depth charts over the next year or so.
Well, look, as I said before, you got to start on special teams, make some nice plays, prove your worth, take some big developmental steps in practice, lock down the receivers we have on our roster. You got to prove it there first. Brian Daboll isn't giving out any starting jobs anymore, but we have a lot of players who aren't necessarily starters, and that's something to consider, right? You look on the outside, Deonte Banks, he's penciled in. He's CB2 this year. But after that, Adoree Jackson, who knows? They may go out and elect to use some of their own guys and not go out and sign a cornerback, not extend Adoree, and that would ultimately leave an option for a guy like Tre Hawkins to fight his way into a starting role. I don't think that's going to happen personally. I think they're going to go out and sign somebody or extend Adoree, and then keep him paired with Deonte Banks, depending on how this kind of season goes in a couple months here. But who's to say that Tre Hawkins doesn't make it really difficult for them to keep him off the roster, like off the team, off the field? And maybe that's a good thing, right? It's a really good thing to have a guy that just fights his way on. Maybe he outperforms one of our cornerbacks. Who's to say that Deonte Banks is going to be a great cornerback? Like, no one can say it for sure. We hope he is. We have a good reason to believe he will be, but you can't guarantee anything. Adoree Jackson, what happens if he gets injured? What happens if a couple guys get hurt and you have no choice? How many times do we see Rodarius Williams play significant snaps over the past couple of years prior to that ACL tear? Even came back last year. So Fabian Moreau, there's guys on this roster that should not have been playing in starting roles for a majority of the season. Who's to say that a similar situation doesn't happen again? Knock on wood a billion times. But Tre Hawkins will be there waiting. He'll be there waiting for an opportunity, grinding, getting better, getting opportunities against some of the good receivers on our team, hopefully putting together some good reps, showing that aggressiveness, showing that good tackling technique, developing his game coming out of a smaller school, making an impact on special teams. That's all you can hope from a player like this. And the one thing he has going for him, he's an elite athlete. Now he just has to take the coaching and gradually get better as this team improves. And I think that the roster construction has definitely put him in a place where there will be chances. He just has to be ready for them.
Yeah, and I think that's always the mindset of Brian Dable, right? He wants those guys to have that next man up mentality, and I think that's where Tre Hawkins is really going to have to strive to achieve that mission in particular. Because once we get into training camp, it's anyone's game. Tre Hawkins, yes, he was drafted in the 6th round, but we've seen 6th round draft picks get cut before. We've seen those players not even make the roster. So once we get over to training camp, Hawkins has to have that next man up mentality. He has to go into the preseason and make some plays. But I will say he is one of the players that I'm most excited to watch during the preseason. I think that the preseason is a great time to get a close look at defensive backs in particular, get to see them going up against a lot different competition than they faced in the past, facing other teams in those preseason games that they have to treat like real games in order to earn their playing time and earn their spot on the team. So Hawkins, once we get over to the preseason, I want to see how physical he really gets, coming from Old Dominion, small school, didn't face the greatest competition in the world during his time in college. But once we get to the preseason, I think that Hawkins can go up against some of these NFL professional experienced wide receivers and get a real test there, and we can get a good sense as to what kind of player Hawkins truly is and what he could do for this New York Giants defense. So, Alex, who are some of the other players you might be keeping an eye on in training camp? Because we've talked about Hawkins, we've talked about a few of these guys that we're looking forward to, and again, I'm going to be keeping a close eye on Hawkins once we get a little later into the summer period. But Hawkins and a few of these other guys, who are you keeping an eye on as we near closer and closer to training camp?
I'm really excited to see Aaron Robinson. I'm really excited to see Cordell Flott. I really am excited for this entire slot position battle. The linebacker group, Bobby Okereke, can't wait to see him get into action because we've missed that presence at linebacker for a long, long time. Offensively, I want to see Jalen Hyatt's speed. I want to see Daniel Bellinger and Darren Waller, expanding. There's so many players that are on this team that have so much upside and so much potential. It's hard to put just a couple names on paper and say, I want to see these guys. I just want to see everyone in rhythm, putting the second layer of this foundation on both sides of the football, on the football field, and hopefully we see really great results because of it.
Yeah, and I like that a lot of those players you mentioned happen to be in the secondary. As I just said, the secondary is really nice to focus in on once you get to preseason because they're going up against that different competition. But I will say one detriment to Tre Hawkins' game, one barrier that he has to see in the field, he doesn't play in the slot. He is your outside prototypical cornerback. And I think that if he were to develop his ability to play in the slot, if he's able to figure out that position, he might open up another lane for him to get some playing time in this defense. Because as you just mentioned, that slot cornerback position is a battle. It's wide open right now. I think Cordell Flott, Aaron Robinson, and again, we'll see. Maybe Tre Hawkins can throw his name into the mix. And of course, we still have Darnay Holmes there. So that's the position that I'm keeping the closest eye on, is the slot cornerback spot defensively. But again, I think that this secondary has a lot of young talent in it, and I'm excited to see it hopefully develop throughout this summer going into the preseason and watch some of these guys maybe become unsung heroes once we get to the regular season. Keep in mind, the guy like Cordell Flott barely played throughout a lot of the regular season, didn't play much into the postseason, and then we got to that game in Minnesota. He had to make a big play, and he came up and he made a pass breakup in the fourth quarter that ultimately helped the Giants win their first postseason game in over a decade. So don't sleep on any of these rookies. They're all in the NFL for a reason, and they all have some strong capabilities. That's why the Giants drafted them. So hopefully Tre Hawkins is given an opportunity to present some of his talents to the world this upcoming season. So can't wait to see what he does, and can't wait to continue discussing all things New York Giants and all things training camp and preseason, all of that stuff right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comments section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and go ahead and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at Fireside Giants, and check us out on Facebook. Without further ado, we will catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.